I discovered MicroVision back in 2000 through the age of spiritual machines, and I've been fascinated ever since. In 2004, I started Ben's MicroVision blog, which eventually led to me joining MicroVision in 2006 to be the product manager for eyewear. We generated about $5 million in revenue before I left in 2011, but I never stopped believing in what this company could become. 14 years later, I'm still a passionate shareholder, and now I share that passion every week on Ben's MicroVision podcast. Subscribe and join the ride. Welcome everyone to another episode of Ben's MicroVision podcast, a podcast for general information and entertainment purposes only, not a financial advice podcast. In this week's episode, we are going to take a look back at what may be an historical week in the history of MicroVision, including their asset purchase of Scantinel Photonics out in Ulm, Germany, and the Q3 conference call that set the table for Glen's master plan and everything that is to come. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Who can believe it's already episode 25 of Ben's MicroVision podcast? This one's going to be titled Mass LIDAR Adoption Curve, and is presented by myself and brought to you by LaserRoasted.com, the freshest coffee anywhere on earth. 1 cup and you'll say, make mine laser roasted. All right, I'm going to hit you with this disclaimer again for reasons that should be obvious, but just so that you understand, nothing in this show is advice of any kind. And in the event that you make any decisions, those belong to you and not me, and I'm just here to share my thoughts and opinions on a best ever basis. So thank you so much. All right, here's one I bet you didn't see coming. MicroVision collaborates with leading photonics ecosystem to acquire FMCW LIDAR business. November 10th, 2025, Redmond, Washington. MicroVision Inc., a technology pioneer delivering advanced perception solutions in autonomy and mobility, today announced that it had entered into an agreement to acquire the business and assets of Scantinel Photonics GmbH, a developer of 1550 nanometer frequency modulated continuous wave, or FMCW, LIDAR technology targeted for initial application in the commercial vehicle market. In connection with the acquisition, MicroVision is collaborating with certain funding and strategic partners to accelerate productization and commercial opportunities. Scantinel Photonics' core technology was developed with financial backing and key support from Zeiss Group, a German manufacturer of optical systems and optoelectronics, Scania, a Swedish commercial trucking OEM, and Photon Ventures, a deep tech venture capital firm purely focused on the key enabling technology of integrated photonics, and a strategic partner of Photon Delta, a Dutch distributor of subsidies for groundbreaking innovation projects accelerating photonic chip application and industrialization. We are thrilled to have this opportunity to advance Scantinel Photonics FMCW technology towards commercialization and to collaborate in this effort with leaders in the EU's extensive photonics ecosystem, said Glen DeVos, MicroVision's Chief Executive Officer. Building on the strong foundation and working with key partners, we see a clear path to delivering a 1550 nanometer FMCW LIDAR solution for long-range applications into a variety of markets, with a focus on commercial vehicle and passenger car ADAS uses. Continued DeVos. Through this acquisition, MicroVision broadens its product portfolio with the addition of a long-range FMCW LiDAR sensor, a strong complement to our existing time-of-flight, long and short-range sensors. MicroVision's unmatched solid-state LiDAR lineup provides us significant optionality to meet safety and autonomy requirements across our target markets. With the signing of an asset purchase agreement in October 2025, MicroVision and a funding partner intend to jointly finance the formation of a new German entity, Scantinel GmbH, to acquire the FMCW technology and related assets, as well as a team of approximately 20 engineers based in Ulm, Germany. The parties expect the transaction to be completed by the end of 2025, subject to certain closing conditions, including clearance from the German Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Energy. All right, let's take a minute to get to know Scantinel Photonics and learn a little bit about their technology and the team out in Ulm, Germany.
My name is Andy Zott. I'm one of the founders and managing director of Scantinel Photonics. We are developing eyes that make autonomous cars see in the future. What you see here is the world's first silicon photonic integrated scanning chip, which scans 256 laser beams across an object without any moving element. In our product we are sending out laser light to measure distance to objects, and what we are doing is sending out the laser beam and measuring the returned photons. What most people don't know is that the most challenging thing about this technology is not actually measuring the distance, but scanning the scene with the laser beam. So the scanning is the most demanding part in this product. And that's also why our name is Scantinel, which comes from scanning, obviously. And that is the technology we focused on from the beginning in our company.
All right, so here's another look at this acquisition. It's interesting wording. MicroVision collaborates with the photonic ecosystem to acquire Scantinel. So what does that mean exactly? So Scantinel was a spin-out of Zeiss, which is, of course, an optics company, along with funding from Scania, which is a big trucking OEM out in Sweden, and Photon Delta and Photon Ventures, which I guess out in Europe, they've got dedicated entities that are responsible for forming venture investments into the photonics industry in the EU. And this collective group funded Scantinel Photonics, and they funded them up until very recently. Very recently, Scantinel Photonics went into bankruptcy type proceedings, and shortly thereafter, MicroVision and an undisclosed funding partner decided to create a new Scantinel GmbH, that they would presumably collectively own and MicroVision would operate. So for what appears to be very small amount of money, MicroVision has now acquired an FMCW LIDAR platform to complement its time-of-flight LIDAR platforms, and it's got this relationship with this undisclosed funding partner, and now seeks to productize the technology created by the Scantinel Photonics folks. It's pretty wild. We spent $15 million to buy Ibeo, and it looks like the cost to buy Scantinel is dramatically less, at least at my reading of the PR. So let's go through the PR and the 8K language. Now, unless there's some other cost to this acquisition that was not described in MicroVision's 8K filing, this is the setup. MicroVision acquired the LiDAR assets from Scantinel and the 20 engineers for $400,000. They formed a new company, $400,000. MicroVision's advancing $1.8 million pre-closing. So between October when they signed it and December 31 when they expect it to close, MicroVision's put $1.8 million into the Scantinel GmbH, which will now be the company that owns the Scantinel Photonics and pays for the engineers. So that's a sum of $2.2 million. They partnered with the strategic funding partner for funding, technical, and regulatory support. So what's not known is whether the funding partner, well, obviously they must have put some funds in, but we don't know what the size of those funds are. So Maybe they put in a lot to form this Scantinel GmbH, or maybe they didn't. But for MicroVision's part, $2.2 million appears to be the cost, along with assuming responsibility for these engineers and the office and basically keeping the company going. So in exchange for $2.2 million upfront and the extension of salary and benefits to these 20 engineers, MicroVision has now expanded its portfolio and will have the opportunity to productize and commercialize an FMCW platform targeting commercial vehicles and ADAS, and maybe some other applications. So this should all happen and be closed by the end of the year, according to the information that's available. So here's a look at the new MicroVision LIDAR sensor portfolio post-Scantinel acquisition. And what you see is we've got now 3 discrete platforms that are highly complementary towards one another, and they vary in specific ways where each will suit different applications. And maybe they can be synergized on a single platform, like the tri-LiDAR concept. But let's just take a look at this portfolio as it stands as soon as this acquisition closes. So you've got Movia for short range at 905 nanometer, short mid-range, sequential flash technology. Then in the middle, you've got Maven, which will be your mid to long range at a 940 nanometer wavelength with the MEMS scanning technology. Both of these are on time of flight. And now you add the Scantinel FMCW operating at the 1550 nanometer wavelength for your long or ultra long range sensing capability. And all of these 3 platforms can benefit from the perception software, which takes the point cloud output from the sensor and determines what is it that's, in the frame. So if you wanted to see extremely far, you need something with more power output than a Maven could put out. So you got Maven in the sweet spot, which maybe is 200 meters or a little bit farther out. And then you've got, 400 meters, 1 kilometer type of thing. You can really juice these 1550 nanometer lasers without introducing any kind of eye safety problem because of the wavelength and the effect on the human eye and sort of biology of stuff. So now you have the opportunity to have a very low cost, very tiny form factor, short range sensor, a little bit longer range, mid range sensor, which is the Maven, and then this super long range, high visibility, 1 kilometer type capability. So I take this as Glen not wanting to be limited in any capacity with regards to how he goes to market. And I'm sure that he's heard from plenty of people who think FMCW is good. The FMCW differentiator is that because of the Doppler effect, when the photon is returned back to the sensor, it can also detect whether that object is moving towards or away from the sensor at the same time that the distance is measured. And with the time of flight systems, you basically need 2 frames to evaluate an object and its position relative to the sensor. And then in the next frame, the same object and its new position relative to the sensor to tell you if it's coming towards you or away from you. So you get the benefit of that new channel of information, of velocity, without having to do any kind of analysis of the content of the point cloud. I want to take a minute and just say thanks so much to everybody who's bought on laserroasted.com, my specialty coffee company. Starting a new coffee company and trying to compete with Starbucks is a tough challenge, but you guys make it all worth it. So I just want to say thanks. We're going to keep new flavors coming. We're going to keep new t-shirts and lifestyle items coming. And I just really appreciate each one of you for your orders. And we're going to keep this thing as great as we can. Thanks again. So the FMCW platform is likely to target a commercial trucking type application out of the gate. This is because you can see farther than you can see with the other time-of-flight platforms, which is necessary because you have a much longer braking distance with these very large and heavy vehicles. So you need to see much farther for the ADAS system to be as useful as possible. So FMCW is good application for this. Something on the order of 2 million units per year of long-haul commercial trucks sold into the world. So there's your total addressable market in commercial long-haul trucks. Call it 2 million. Now, how many of those are sold in China? I'm not sure. But if you take out the China part, maybe that's 30%. So that leaves you with 1.4 million trucks that could benefit from an FMCW LIDAR ADAS type solution. Okay, so let's change gears for a minute and talk about the conference call. The essential message of the conference call can be distilled in this sentence that happened towards the beginning. Roughly 25 years ago, radar started as large, complex, and expensive assemblies with very limited adoption. So where are we now? In 2024, over 140 million were produced for the automotive market alone. LIDAR can follow a very similar path. And I think that's really it. If you were to put Glen's plan in a nutshell, it would be Glen's going to do for LIDAR what already happened with radar, and of course what he was instrumental in doing while he was at Aptiv, right? He ran active safety at Aptiv. They were democratizing safety and putting radar in all these cars, and he was at the forefront of all of it. And now he has a new sensing modality, and he's going to do the exact same thing using light beams instead of radio waves. So, this is not pie in the sky stuff. Exactly. This is a guy who's already been there with a different sensing modality. He knows the exact playbook for how to go from it's only on aircraft to now there's multiple units on every vehicle. Already knows how to do it. And now he's the captain of the ship at MicroVision. So he's explained exactly how he's going to do it, and let's walk through it. Okay, the 3 steps to achieving mass LiDAR adoption is 1, reduce the sensor cost by using wafer-level processes versus mechanical systems. So belts and pulleys and the Luminar type systems are not going to do it. You need to use electronic chip manufacturing processes to the degree possible. And that's what lets you stamp out these types of things by the millions. So we want the lowest cost. The satellite architecture further reduces the cost by simplifying what each sensor needs to do. All the sensor needs to do itself is put out the point cloud. So you want the cheapest, most reliable point cloud on the most simplified hardware possible. And then all of the smarts and the intelligence about interpreting what's in the point cloud resides in a central computer inside the vehicle. And that may be the OEM decides exactly what that is. It could be configured by a tier 1 like your Aptivs of the world, whatever. But it's unlikely that the smarts are going to reside on the sensor in a world of mass LiDAR adoption. It's a point cloud generating device. Point cloud gets piped to the central controller, which interprets the scene and connects to the braking and the steering and all the rest of it. And then the third one, which was, deferred in terms of expounding on that in a lot of detail on this call, is to leverage software to further reduce the costs in the hardware. So all 3 of these points are about cost, which I thought was really interesting. Now, I don't know exactly what he means by this, but my interpretation is that the smarter and better the algorithms get at interpreting the point cloud data, the less fidelity you need on the input side. So meaning to say, as your algorithms get better at taking the noise out of the systems and understanding the content of the scene based on machine learning and all the rest of it. It reduces the demand on the hardware to give you the most resolution, right? It's able to do the interpretation based on a more limited input set, which reduces the cost of the sensor. Sensor provides the input set. So if you can generate or understand or make an application where you can achieve the same objective, meaning braking or steering at the appropriate time in the appropriate way, with a lower fidelity input because your software is better, then you can further reduce the cost of the hardware and the value of the software goes up. And the thing about software is you can print 100 billion units and there's no incremental cost. With hardware, you've got to actually make a physical device each time. It is obvious, right? But that's the thing. So software has no incremental cost per unit. Hardware does. If you can achieve the same result with a simplified, reduced capability hardware, because your software is able to interpret this, reduced information set, you've achieved the same thing at a lower cost, and that's how you get to mass LIDAR adoption. So here's another sentence from Glen that basically summarizes this, talking about Movia S. Movia S is an amazing standalone product, but it also enables the implementation of the satellite architecture I referred to earlier, what we call tri-LIDAR for automotive applications. Low cost, compact, high-performance sensors are the key to unlocking satellite architectures, and it is exactly what vision and radar have accomplished. It's why in most cars today, they have between 3 to 5 radar and 6 to 9 cameras. LIDAR can and will follow the same path, not just for fully autonomous systems such as level 3 or 4 cars, or AGVs and AMRs, but for driver and operated assistance systems as well. The industry refers to this as the democratization of safety, and that's what MicroVision's products are enabling. Movia S is currently being demonstrated with numerous customers, and its production launch is planned for Q4 of 2026. Okay, so this is all very encouraging. A very ambitious vision that's led by somebody who's already accomplished it in another modality. So, fantastic. I guess the part where maybe folks were disappointed was the $30 to $50 million, 12 to 18 months Movia L forecast. It's not a forecast, was deferred or punted or, is not going to happen. And if you saw last week's episode when we went through the sales leader acquisition article that was written by the executive search firm, probably it's not too much of a surprise. There was a problem with the sales. They thought new sales management could sort it out, and the previous firm struck out. New firm has found Fraser, and so now here we are. So we're now at the point where you've got very, very good senior leadership in the CEO seat and at the sales and business development seat. So, if you were going to be surprised that they weren't unveiling $30 to $50 million on the call, maybe the article would have been a tip that is unlikely. One other aspect of this that's interesting is that MicroVision essentially disrupted themselves by creating the Movia S that essentially obsoleted the Movia L because it's smaller, lower cost. It seems to have as good performance, if not better. So it's a tricky situation. What do you do? Not create Movia S because you want to sell Movia L for a year? Or instead, get to that next generation as fast as possible and try to address a larger market, because all these markets are cost sensitive. If the Movia L costs 10 times as much as Movia S, which I suspect is probably the case, then Movia L is going to have a limited shelf life as it is. So, the challenge with the whole setup is that millions of dollars worth of Movia Ls were created. They came off the assembly line at ZF and they land in MicroVision's inventory, anticipating a customer is going to sign and we're going to, hand all these units over at once. So if that's not going to happen because Movia S is better, and if you just wait 6 months, now you get a better product, then what do you do? What do you do with the stockpile of Movia Ls? So I have an idea, and I'll share it with you, and I don't know if the company watches the show or not, but, you can tell me if you think it's a good idea or not. And that would be, if you can't sell these units because you're about to disrupt it with something radically smaller and less expensive, but the feature functionality is the same, right? It's got the same perception software on board. It's got similar resolution, maybe not the same field of view, but close enough that it's usable in a lot of circumstances. That's why they designed it and built it. Why not go out and seed the market in other verticals? Why not bring a big stack of these Movia Ls over to the people building those humanoid robots and strap it to the guy's chest and say, why don't you try this out? It's not doing us any good sitting in a warehouse. Put it into new applications, new modalities, and grow the business by using the hardware that we've already built and paid for to seed a new generation of opportunities for us. All right, another new development that we learned about on the call was the hiring of our new Vice President of Global Engineering, Greg Scharenbrock, formerly of Intel and Toyota and Delphi. So, if you're all in on automotive, you're all in on automotive, and we're all in on automotive, right? Greg brings more than 30 years of experience leading world-class engineering teams and driving innovation in automotive technologies. Before joining MicroVision, this is so great. Before joining MicroVision, Greg held senior leadership roles where he guided global teams in delivering next-generation software-defined vehicle platforms, advanced driver assistance, ADAS, and in-vehicle infotainment solutions for major programs worldwide. Throughout his career, Greg has built and scaled engineering organizations focused on innovation, product excellence, and customer impact. Known for his collaborative leadership style and passion for technology that makes driving safer and smarter, Greg is perfectly aligned with MicroVision's vision of enabling the future of mobility through advanced LIDAR and perception systems. Welcome, Greg. I think this is so great. It's just fantastic. So Greg joins as Vice President of Global Engineering, leading the development and commercialization of advanced automotive LiDAR and perception systems at MicroVision. Prior to joining MicroVision, Greg was at Intel Corporation, where he was the Vice President of Intel Automotive, responsible for delivering hardware, software, safety, and security solutions at the silicon and platform level for Intel's software-defined vehicle roadmap, also leading program execution of AD, ADAS, and IVI products. Prior to being the Vice President of Intel Automotive, Greg was Senior Director of Engineering, Autonomous Driving. Okay, prior to that, Greg was with Toyota as Manager, Integrated Vehicle Systems, and Principal Engineer, Strategy, Dev, and Planning in Active Safety. Prior to that, 17 years at Delphi. Probably how he knows Glen. So, it's an extremely impressive resume, and certainly the right notes are hit. As far as collaborative leadership style, looks like he's in Chandler, Arizona, so another remote guy. Personally, I think it's great to hire the best person no matter where they're located, rather than limiting your search to people in a 30-mile radius of a headquarters, because this is how you get people like Greg to join your organization, Now, if you were hoping for the Q3 conference call to be the unveiling of the new MicroVision external-facing narrative and website and communication strategy, it hasn't happened yet. And what was interesting in the call was the references to the upcoming CES. CES is when things are going to start happening. Okay, they're going to share details about the ultra long range product plans at the CES. They're going to share details about the next step about the technology for drones at the CES. So CES is where we're going to learn about the plans for defense and about the plans for integrating FMCW LIDAR into MicroVision's product portfolio. It's a situation where events on the ground are happening faster than the narrative can catch up. Because if you look at the current website and communications, nothing about defense, nothing about FMCW, of course, has just happened. But, if you want to share MicroVision 2.0, which is now integrated with multiple technology nodes with different operating modalities, it's not reflected yet. So it's going to be great when they do. One other element of, shall we say, unsolicited advice, if we are looking for executives to run sales and business development, which we just did, and we got Fraser looks fantastic, and we got Greg to run engineering, what about marketing? Do we want to get a similar heavy hitter that could make MicroVision a brand name everywhere? Or do we just kind of expect that happens in due course as we get some commercial wins? I don't know, but I sure would like to see us elevate our game in terms of narrative, communication, graphics, the website, the brand equity associated with MicroVision. Question about MicroVision's future in the augmented reality vertical was raised. And the question was, does the company have any plans to update investors on the status of the AR vertical? And is the technology being actively marketed to potential customers? There's been talks of HoloLens 3 launching in 2026. Is MicroVision tech in HoloLens 3? To which Glen replies, I'll maybe start with the last question first. Not to our knowledge. So that's consistent with the fact that we're not really actively pursuing AR-related markets at this time. We have the IP, we have capability. We'll kind of monitor those. But right now, if you think about our resources and where we're allocating our capital, it's really in the three verticals that we've talked about with industrial, defense, and automotive. And AR is always an interesting topic. At this point, we're just watching to see, can that be interesting for us? But there's no active development or pursuits in that space as of today. So, there you have it. Whatever they've got, they're just going to sit on it because this is an automotive team that's got eyes on the prize. And the truth is, it takes focus. Because what they're trying to do is change the world. They're trying to introduce a sensing capability into vehicles that doesn't exist. They're trying to change the way automated driving happens. They're trying to make a massive step change forward in autonomy worldwide. And it's a difficult thing if your attention is in any way bifurcated. So total focus. You got an automotive guy with an automotive sales guy and now an automotive engineering guy, and they're running the show. And they probably are not interested in what they might consider science experiments or things that are not right in their wheelhouse. So as far as events at the company are concerned that we could conceivably track on a calendar, it starts to look like this. The first one is the drone proof of concept. They describe the proof of concept would be wrapped up this year, so between now and the end of the year. Then the next one is CES. They mentioned CES for two things. One, the drone software application next steps, what MicroVision's offer is for the drone market. They're going to put forward something at the CES. That's January 6th of the coming year. At the same time, they talked about their plans for the frequency modulated continuous wave Scantinel acquired device and product. So we'll learn about that. So that's coming up. And if they want to overhaul the messaging and the communication strategy at the same time, it'd probably be the right time for that. Then sometime in the first half, which would mean before the end of Q2, would be the drone swarm demonstration. So this is going to be fantastic because right now, if it's on one drone, that's great. But if it's on an entire swarm of drones and they can collectively map an entire terrain and share information amongst themselves using MicroVision's LIDAR and sensor fusion and some form of communications, it's going to be a potentially game-changing kind of a thing. So I'm very optimistic for that. They talked about Q2 for the LCAS launch. Now, I was talking about how Movia L, they should just go and seed the market. Well, they actually have product plans for the Movia L. It's going to be used as the LCAS. So the LCAS is LIDAR collision avoidance system. I believe this is targeting forklifts in particular. So they're going to revamp whatever they've got so far and put it forward in Q2 of next year. And that should help move that inventory. And then as far as Q3 goes, I don't know what's on tap for that. And Q4 will be when the Movia S is launched. So we could start to get an idea for the market opportunity that a very small, very inexpensive, very wide field of view LiDAR sensor could have in the market. So I guess the thesis boils down to, do you believe that LiDAR is going to become ubiquitous for automotive safety? If you do believe that, then you have to believe that the cost structure is going to come down to the point where all these OEMs can put multiple LiDAR on their car, and maybe they're even displacing some radars or some cameras, and it's all cost effective and appropriate. So then the question is, who is commoditizing all these LiDAR, right? And of course, the Chinese OEMs are going to do what they're doing. I don't believe that the US will allow Chinese LiDAR to be deployed onto US roads for national security reasons. So then you've got Ava, Luminar, MVIS, and MicroVision. And there's some other smaller players, but let's just say these are the biggest and most well-known. Luminar is in very serious financial trouble, and so they probably are not going to fulfill it. So now you've got Ava, MVIS, MicroVision. Okay. Ava is an interesting company. They have FMCW. They are burning on the order of $10 million a month or $30 million plus a quarter. They just took on $100 million in debt, which will last them about 9 months at that rate. So probably they need to do something different in order to make a sustainable business for themselves. MVIS is an interesting company and probably a good competitor. We'll have to see. The crowd is thinning out. There's only a few LiDAR producers left. Who will these OEMs trust to fulfill tens of millions of LiDAR units? Is it the guy who they already did that with radar? Maybe. So I think that's going to do it for this one. Thanks so much for joining me. I hope this has been a good use of time for you. And I look forward to getting back with you next Saturday. Please do like, subscribe, comment, share with your friends. Do all that stuff. Every time you comment here on the YouTube channel, that helps. So I appreciate it. And if you go to laserroasted.com and buy a bag of coffee beans, I guarantee you will not be disappointed by the freshness and flavor. So thanks again for that. And we'll see you next Saturday.